everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Tiger Talk. We are excited to have joining us today for this week, Matt Rhodes, who is with our financial aid office, to talk with you about financial aid and what it really means and all of the things that you and your student might need to do to prepare for this coming year. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So again, my name is Matt Rhodes. I'm the Financial Aid and Scholarship Outreach Coordinator. So I'm kind of a good point person for if you have any questions about how financial aid or scholarships work. I'm happy to help out anytime I can.
Awesome. So to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about what falls under that umbrella that we call financial aid?
Right. Okay. So a lot of times people think about financial aid, and financial aid is a blanket term. It's just sometimes people throw a much larger blanket than it actually is, right? So and what I mean by that specifically is there's financial aid and then there's scholarships, okay? So when we talk about financial aid, usually what we're referring to are going to be loans, yes, but also grant programs. And then loans and grant programs are kind of the primary things that come from the Fafsa, for example, which we're going to talk a lot about. And then there are some scholarship programs as well, okay, that are influenced by the Fafsa, influenced by your eligibility for financial aid, okay? So they are interconnected, even though, you know, some of the qualifications for scholarships are separate than your qualifications from financial aid. And so that would be kind of how I would describe it. Yeah.
So speaking of financial aid, how do students apply for it, and how can they be awarded financial aid?
There you go. So yeah, I wanted to pause my last answer so I didn't just lead into all these other questions. So I mentioned the Fafsa, right? The Fafsa is the free application for federal student aid. And when you apply for a Fafsa, when you fill out a Fafsa, free application for federal student aid, actually it's the student who's filling out the Fafsa, right? They are applying for federal financial aid programs, state financial aid programs, traditionally if you are a student attending an in-state university. So obviously for the University of Memphis, that would be Tennessee residents. But also in many cases, there may be institutional financial aid programs as well. So the University of Memphis does offer a handful of institutional grant programs to qualified students based on their Fafsa information. So federal, state, and financial aid awards can be influenced and qualified through information criteria on the Fafsa. And so that is step A, number one, in determining your funding for college every year, is to complete the free application for federal student aid, which is available each year in October the 1st for the application for the following school year. So for those of us who are coming in for the 2021-2022 school year, that means the Fafsa has been available since last October. Still plenty of time to fill it out. We want you to fill it out as soon as you can. But keep in mind for the 2022-2023 school year, next school year, you're going to fill out the Fafsa this upcoming October as well. It's something you repeat every year.
So that's good to know when they're supposed to apply and how to do that, and that they need to do that each and every year that they need. And so that's important for parents. And as you mentioned, the student should be filling it out, but they will also need their parents' information on that, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So as far as who should apply, it should be everyone who's trying to get any kind of aid, right? As far as when to apply, it needs to be as close to on or after October the 1st of every year, because there's a lot of first come, first served aid. And who else is involved? Okay, so that's an excellent question. Yes, it's going to be the student who is filling out the Fafsa. But the vast majority of times for an undergraduate student, a student pursuing their first bachelor's degree, parents' information is also required. Okay, so it can be either parent, right? But parental information is required, and it's going to be information from anyone from the household, right? So kind of the nuclear household, mom, dad, student, and siblings information is going to be involved there. And in order to actually complete a Fafsa, one thing I want to make sure that we mention is we need an FSA ID. That's a federal student aid identification. Student's going to create an FSA ID, a username and password that they use to fill out the Fafsa. Parents, in those cases where a parent is required, which again is most of the time for undergraduate students, parents also need an FSA ID. The correct website for that is fsaid.ed.gov. And then the correct website for the Fafsa itself is studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov.
And we'll make sure and put all those links below as well so that you can link right to them. So once the student and their family members have helped them fill out the FAFSA and are ready to go, what is kind of their next step on checking out that financial aid package that they have been awarded from the University of Memphis?
Okay, good question. So what a student needs to do from there is to actually log into their My Memphis account. Okay, log into your My Memphis account, and to review your financial aid information, you're going to click on Student Pages and then My Finances. Under My Finances, you're going to check for any missing requirements. Okay, so about 30% of people who fill out a FAFSA have some kind of extra paperwork they need to submit to it. Sometimes it's tax documents. Sometimes it's a university-specific worksheet that you got to fill out. There's a couple of other things that might be there. When a student is looking at their My Memphis account under the My Finances page, and they look at the financial aid requirements box, they're either going to see green check marks and or red flags. Red flags are things that we need from you, right? That we need from you. And so red flags are things that you want to take care of sooner rather than later. We don't want it to be something that stresses you out. That's something that I've been telling students all summer who are coming through orientation. Is red flags are things that you need to do, and you need to do them sooner rather than later, but we are here to help, right? Most of the time it's a pretty simple process. Sometimes it can be a little bit complicated, but we are always here to help you figure out how to take care of those processes. So make it, go ahead and get those things taken care of, but don't stress out about them. After you have taken care of all of your red flags, the box under financial aid requirements on the My Finances page is financial aid awards. And you click on financial aid awards. That's where you can actually review your individual award offer as far as grants, loans, and in most cases, scholarships are going to be on there as well, depending on the type of scholarship that you've applied for.
And so listed in that package, sometimes people get a little confused about the kind of the different options and what's listed on there. Obviously, if it's a grant, students definitely want to take that, those scholarships, those two, but often there's a little confusion between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between that and recommendations that you might have around those?
Sure. So you mentioned grants and scholarships, right? Grants and scholarships are free monies. Those are monies you don't have to pay back. So if you qualify for grants and scholarships, you definitely want to take those first. So that's the first thing is you want to accept money that you don't have to pay back. Okay. Then if you still have something that you owe the University of Memphis, or you still need additional funding for living expenses or books or supplies or whatever else, all right, the overwhelming vast majority of students who complete a FAFSA are going to be offered some type of loan. There are two types of student loans available to students who fill out a FAFSA, and those are, as you mentioned, the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. Okay, so there are far more similarities between a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan than there are differences. So let me tell you the differences first. You have to qualify for a subsidized loan based on the information that goes into your FAFSA. Okay, so the information, for example, for this current aid year FAFSA that we're coming into 2021-2022, that was based on 2019's tax information. So the information from 2019 that went on this year's FAFSA determines your eligibility for a subsidized loan, among other things. If you are eligible for a subsidized loan, if you qualify for it, that is the better loan to have because it does not accrue interest while you're in school. So that's kind of the key point, right? Is loans you have to pay back. Make no mistake, if you borrow loan money, you're going to be paying back loan money one way or the other, okay? But the major difference between them is that a subsidized loan does not accrue interest. An unsubsidized loan does accrue interest while you are in school. Now, once you're out of school, they both accrue interest, right? 6 months after a student is no longer enrolled in at least 6 credit hours in a degree-seeking program, the subsidized loan is going to, there's two things that happen. The subsidized loan is going to start accruing interest, just like the unsubsidized loan and any portion of it that a student has accepted. And number two, you have to start making payments back, okay? So that helps me segue into the similarities, right? The differences are you have to qualify for a subsidized loan and it does not accrue interest. An unsubsidized loan does accrue interest. And then similarities, these are both loans in the student's name, so students are legally responsible for paying them back. You are not required to make payments on these loans until the student is out of school, plus an additional 6 months. There is a 6-month grace period after the student is out of school. But once you are past that 6 months, you're paying X number of dollars per month on a due date every month, right? It becomes like any other kind of bill. But the thing is there's no penalty for prepayment. So even though your payments are deferred until you are out of school plus 6 months, students, there's no penalty for prepayment. So actually, really, we tend to encourage students to make payments on those loans as you can afford while you are in school, especially an unsubsidized loan, that one that would be accruing interest while you're in school. Like I said, however much you can afford, as frequently or as infrequently as you can, because anything that you're paying now is much less that you have to pay later. Much less that you have to pay later. So keep that in mind.
That's a really good point about the prepayment and making it part of your budget on a regular basis, even as a college student. So with the loans, say a student doesn't quite need everything that they have been awarded with those loans. Do they have to take it all, or is there a way for them to say, well, I just want this amount to cover these things?
Sure. You do not have to take out the maximum amount of loans that are offered to you. Okay. Grants and scholarships, typically, if you accept any part of it, you're accepting all of it. But like I said, that's free money. So that's okay to do. But if you only need, $700 of a loan, you only need to accept $700 of a loan. You have the opportunity to accept the full amount. You can choose to accept the full amount, but keep in mind that's a choice that you're making. But you do not have to accept the full amount. We can't process a loan for like $5, so we can't just buy you lunch. But I think there's a I don't want to give you an exact number, but it's a couple $100 is kind of the minimum. Somewhere $100, $150, $200 is kind of the minimum. I don't know the exact number of what can be processed in any one transaction. So yeah.
Good to know. And so if a student does decide to take out loans, but say it doesn't fully cover all of their tuition and fees, and if they're living on campus and they need books, is there a way to kind of supplement that anymore, maybe from their parents, or things like that?
Sure. So after we have exhausted, so that kind of brings me back to what I was saying about grants and scholarships, right? You accept your grants and scholarships first. After we've exhausted that, students look at your loans, okay? And if you look at the loans that are available in addition to any grants or scholarships that you may or may not be eligible for, after you've exhausted all of that eligibility, if you still have an account balance, you still need additional funding. For dependent students specifically, parents can apply for what's called a Parent Plus loan. And it's a parent loan for undergraduate students. So I guess that the Parent Plus is a little bit redundant, but a plus loan is a parent loan for undergraduate students that parents can apply for, parents of dependent students, at studentaid.gov. So you remember when I said earlier, most parents need an Fsa Id, right? To help your student complete the Fafsa. You're going to use that same Fsa Id, that same username and password, parents, that you helped your student complete their Fafsa with, to apply for a plus loan in your name for your student's educational expenses. And that's kind of the key point to keep in mind about a plus loan, is if you are approved and you choose to accept that loan, it is in your name, not your student's name. Okay, so that's one point to remember. Another point to remember on a Parent Plus loan, it does require a credit check. Okay, it's a very quick credit check. It's not like if you're calling the bank to try to buy a car or a house, which can take a long period of time. It's a quick credit check. You put in your information on the website, you push the button, and immediately it says, congratulations, you are approved or not. So it tells you pretty quickly what your results are. If you are choosing to accept that loan, parents, you also have to take an extra step, which is to complete a master promissory note in order to accept that loan amount. There's a couple more points I want to make about the plus loans. One of them is that plus loans, so I told you student loans have automatic deferment until your student is out of school plus 6 months. Parent loans do not have automatic deferment. And parent loans are unsubsidized. So they are going to accrue interest while your student's in school. Right. So parent loans do accrue interest while you're in school. They do not have automatic deferment, but for the deferment question, you can request deferment while your student is in school plus an additional 6 months. And generally speaking, we do encourage parents who are applying for plus loans to do that. It puts the ball in their court. They're not required to make payments every month, but they can make payments every month or every week or every other week, or however much they want to, and whatever amount they can afford to. So that's another thing And then what was the final? Okay, yeah, here's the last point that I want to make sure I make about a PLUS loan is there's a reason that I say that you should let your student exhaust all of their aid first, including their loans. And here's what it is. Student loans are almost always a lower interest rate than parent loans. It is almost always about 2% more for a parent loan, 2 to 2.5% more for a parent loan than it is for the loan in the student's name, right? And if your student is eligible for a subsidized loan, that's an even bigger difference between the interest, okay? And so my thinking on it is this, parents, and I talk to parents frequently who say, my student is not gonna have any loan money in their name. And so I'm gonna get the loan money in my name and I'm gonna pay it for them. And I appreciate that sentiment. And I have the same thoughts about my kids when they get to college. But here's the thinking. Here's the thinking that I have, and that is let your student take out their loans first at a lower interest rate. Okay. And see if you even need the extra Parent Plus loan. And whatever you are going to be paying parents in your name on a Parent Plus loan at a higher interest rate, let your students pay that on their loan in their name at a lower interest rate. It gives them a little bit of a credit history, just a little one, but it also saves you interest money. And it can be a pretty significant amount of interest money over the course of a college career. So keep that in mind, right? Let your student exhaust all of their aid before you look at the PLUS loan, but the PLUS loan is available for parents of dependent students who do need additional funding.
And that's a great point about while it is very admirable to make sure that your student, that you are helping them along the way, it is important to take advantage of everything that's out there and don't pay more money if you don't have to along the way. I know your student would probably love that money to, pay off those loans faster, or you can do something else fun with it, take a vacation or celebrate that commencement when it comes around the next time. So definitely, I think that's a really great, wonderful point. So once a student's all done, they've got their financial aid, and everything's in line. They have all those green check marks. They're ready to go. Can you talk a little bit about when they're going to see their bill and how their financial aid will show up on that, just so that they have a sense of that when that rolls around later this summer?
Sure. So for a fall semester, usually the University and Student Business Services Office starts adding bills in July. And usually it is latter part of the first week of July or sometimes in the second week, right? So it's going to be the early part of July, but not like not before July 4th, right? So, not before July 4th, we'll put it like that. And it does vary a little bit from year to year. But sometime in July is when you will actually have official bills on accounts. And something to keep in mind, students, because sometimes students make adjustments to their enrollment. They choose to be in an online class instead of an on-campus class, or they enroll in a class that has departmental fees, whereas the original enrollment didn't, right? So keep in mind that your bill is going to change as you make changes to your enrollments, okay? So whether that is the enrollment in classes or you change what dorm you're in, I don't even know if that's possible. I don't work for residence life, so don't quote me on that, or your meal plan or anything else. That can affect your bill. So don't look at it on the first day it's there and think that that's going to be exactly the same as what it is on August the 16th, which is fee payment deadline for this summer. All right, so around early mid-July is when bills will be on accounts. You can review that information also on your My Memphis account, also under the My Finances page. On the right column is where the stuff I was talking about is financial aid requirements, financial aid awards. On the left column is TigerXpress, and TigerXpress is where you can review your bill, you can make payments, you can sign up for E-Refunds if you feel like your student's going to get a refund of any of their funding. If any of their funding exceeds their account balance, then sign up for E-Refunds. That's where you can review that information, make payments. There is an installment payment plan available as well. I want to make sure that I mention that because we've been talking about loans some, right? And loans are there for you if you need them. But hey, if it's affordable for you to pay X number of dollars basically per month over the course of a semester, then maybe you should do that instead of getting a loan. That's just something to keep in mind. There is an installment payment plan available from the University Student Business Services Office every fall and every spring. So do keep that in mind. So does that kind of, did I cover the question there?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that gives and it's important as well for parents to know that while we don't have a system for them to look at the financial aid awards, we do have a way for them to see their students' bill. So
Right.
If your student wants to give you access to what is called our TigerXpress system, the fee payment system, they can give you parent and guest access, which we'll link below as well. And so that's a way for you all to see the bill and pay it directly too, without having to have them log in or give them your credit card or things like that as well. So that's also an option.
So speaking of that, two things, because you mentioned a credit card and you mentioned it's parental access, right? So I do want to clarify, federal privacy laws do limit what we as financial aid and scholarships are able to discuss with a parent without a student expressing their permission each and every time that you call us or email us. There are other parts of a student's involvement at the University of Memphis that parents can have access to. And the bills and payments are one of them. But keep in mind, how much you owe and how you can pay it is one of them, but how much a student is eligible for in financial aid and scholarships is not. So do keep that part in mind. And then the other thing, you mentioned credit cards. When you're making a payment online through TigerXpress, if you can figure out a way to make that payment via electronic check, it's going to save you some money. If you use a credit card or even a debit card, right? Even a debit card that is linked to that same checking account, if it is a piece of plastic with the 16 digits and the expiration date and all that, they're going to charge you a certain percentage as a processing fee. And it's like 2.85%. So keep that in mind. If you can, pay via electronic check, your routing number, your checking account number, and to save yourself a processing fee.
Good point too, to make sure that that's there by that deadline. And what was the fee payment deadline for fall again?
The payment deadline for fall is August the 16th, and classes start the very next week. And that's traditionally what fee payment deadline is going to be. Usually it's the Monday before classes start. And that means that if there's any hiccups along the way on the fee payment deadline, you can always give us a call on Tuesday and we're here to help. And it's not like you're starting classes the very next day without having things figured out. So Monday before classes start usually is fee payment deadline.
Yeah. And it's at 4:30 p.m. That is very, very strict timing on that one too, for those parents out there. 4:30 Central Time on that one. So you mentioned e-refunds. When can you tell parents a little bit about that process, what their student needs to do to sign up to get a refund if they do have maybe some excess financial aid that they'll be able to utilize?
Sure. Right. So the way that kind of the process, so we have bills that hit in July, but that doesn't mean your financial aid is actually authorized for payment in July, right? So you're gonna see, even if you've accepted your scholarships and your grants and your loans and all that stuff, keep in mind that that money is not actually going to process towards your account balance until right around August the 16th. Okay, so maybe just a couple of business days before that. Is when the funds will actually be transferring over your eligible funds from financial aid and scholarships to the University Student Business Services Office to your actual account balance. But you can have a pretty good idea based on what you've accepted, based on what your account balance is, as to whether or not you're still going to owe money or if you're going to get some money back. If you are going to get money back, like I mentioned earlier, sign up for E-Refunds, which you can sign up for through TigerXpress. You put in your checking account of choice. We encourage you to use the student's checking account, of course, for those student awards. Put in that information, and within just a couple of business days of when the money actually transfers over to payment to the University Student Business Services Office, e-refunds will be dispersed. Usually it is within that week between fee payment deadline and when classes actually start. Usually it's within that week. And a lot of students take that refund and they use it to buy books and supplies and things like that. So it's important to be signed up for e-refunds, because here's the thing: if you get a refund and you are not signed up for e-refunds, they only put e-refund checks in the mail. You can't come pick them up. They only mail them on Fridays. And traditionally, they mail them the Friday after classes start, because sometimes there's a lot of, students are changing their enrollment and their dorms and things like that within the first week of classes. Those things can happen. And so they wait until the dust settles before they actually send out the paper refund checks. So ultimately, the thing is this, right? If you were going to use your refund for books and supplies, it's important for you to have that refund before classes start, not a week or two after classes start in a paper check. So do sign up for e-refunds on TigerXpress, and that process should be within a few business days before classes actually start.
Great. Yeah, that's a good thing to note about the refunds. We want to make sure they get their money a little bit faster so they can use it for those books and school supplies and things like that. So one question as well. So we've kind of mentioned you're in the financial aid office, and then you've also mentioned our university business services. Can you talk a little bit about how you all work together, but also the differences, and maybe if people have a question, if a student has a question or a parent has a question, who they should call for or contact for which one?
Okay. So the University Student Business Services Office handles all payments. They handle your account balance. They are who you make payments to. Okay, so they're the cashier's office, right? And the financial aid office we are the office that helps you figure out how to pay it with various types of funding. So, the things we've already mentioned. How do you qualify for grants to pay the University Student Business Services Office for your fees? How do you qualify for loans? How do you qualify for scholarships? How do you qualify for these things? And how do you get those things applied to your account balance? So ultimately, I would say about who to call, when, for what. If you have a question about why you are charged a certain this or that, that's the University Student Business Services Office. If you have a question about what your account balance is, when it is due, payment options, not including financial aid and scholarships, so not including the out-of-pocket payment options. Those are questions for the University Student Business Services Office. Okay, and probably the most common one that we get that we cannot answer is, why was I charged XYZ? Right? Why was I charged this departmental fee? Why was I charged this, that, or the other? Okay. That is a question for the University Student Business Services Office. Questions that you can call us for would be, what am I eligible for, first of all? Have I accepted the monies appropriately? Are they ready to pay out? Approximately when will they pay out? We cannot give you an exact date, time, moment, but we can give you a general idea. How do I keep these awards? That's an important one. How do we maintain our eligibility? Things like that, so we can help you get the money to pay for it, but the actual paying for it and how much you owe and things like that is for the University Student Business Services Office. Probably, and I don't work in the University Student Business Services Office, but based on the traffic that we get, one of the more common questions they probably get that is not for them but is for us is, when will my XYZ pay out? When will my loan pay out? When will my grant payout and things like that, right? So, or when is my Hope Scholarship going to be applied to my account? That kind of stuff, right? So that is something, those are questions for us, right? Is when and where is the funding and what am I eligible for? The questions for them are, what do I owe? Why do I owe it? And outside of the financial aid and scholarships that are coming, how can I pay for it out of pocket?
Good, great. And so you mentioned as well in there a little bit about maybe those requirements that scholarships or grants might have. Can you talk a little bit about what some of those might be, and how a student might figure out what they need to do to maintain their scholarships or grants?
Cool. Okay. So how do I say this, right? Maintenance requirements for financial aid are a little more simple than the maintenance requirements for scholarships, right? Because there's so many different kinds of scholarships, and every one of them have slightly different maintenance requirements. So let's start with the financial aid, the grants and the loans. The grants and the loans specifically, we need you to have a 2.0 cumulative GPA, and we need you to be completing at least 67% of the classes that you attempt, right? And so what is that part? The GPA is pretty obvious, but what's the completion percentage? Okay. So when you take a class and you fail it, you have not passed this class. You've attempted it, but you did not complete it because you did not pass it. So that hurts your completion percentage. If I take 4 classes and I fail one of them, then I have only completed 75% of my classes. Make sense? 3 out of 4. And so that's the introductory to completion percentage. But an F hurts your completion percentage, but it also, of course, it hurts your GPA. So what is an alternative to an F? If a student is taking a class and it gets to be midterms and they are struggling. It's a bad time. There is an opportunity for a certain period of time in a semester to withdraw from a class. But here's something that I want to make very, very clear. A withdrawal does hurt your completion percentage. It doesn't hurt your GPA, but it does hurt your completion percentage. Do not make the decision to withdraw from a class alone, students. Don't just decide, this is too hard, I'm out, right? Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. You want to talk to your professor first and say, hey, I'm having a hard time here. I really, I want to do the best I can in this class, and I don't want to have to, I don't want to withdraw from it. Is there anything that we can do? Can I come to your office hours? Can I get some, can you suggest some tutoring? Can you suggest some additional materials, texts or whatever that I can do to help improve my grade for the rest of the semester? So that's the first thing. If it looks like you need to withdraw from a class anyway, don't do that until you've talked to financial aid and scholarships first. Because, like I said, having a W can impact, it can hurt your completion percentage. Even withdrawing from one class can affect your future financial aid eligibility. So always come check with us first before you do that. And to take it one step further, a little bit more extreme, is if you feel like you need to withdraw from an entire semester, from whatever you're enrolled in down to 0 credit hours, complete withdrawal from a semester has even more serious repercussions. So come talk to us. Definitely in any situation you're trying to withdraw from a class, but even more so if you're trying to withdraw from all your classes for any reason whatsoever. So we can let you know how it's going to affect your future financial aid eligibility and your current financial aid eligibility. So 67% completion percentage is required at least, and a 2.0 cumulative GPA or better for loans and grants. Now for scholarships, it's a little bit different. For our academic scholarships at the University of Memphis, specifically the deans, the provost, and the presidential, we need, which are incoming freshman scholarships, academic scholarships, we need a 2.75 cumulative GPA technically after the first year, and then a 3.0 cumulative GPA every year after that. And you have to be enrolled full-time. You got to complete 24 credit hours in an academic year. And there are a certain number of service hours required for each of these scholarships. And that will be a red flag on your account if you are a recipient of one of those scholarships. Okay. Letting you know you owe us X number of volunteer hours. There are several different ways to take care of those volunteer hours. Our website is a really good resource for that, Fsa.edu/scholarships. Or of course, you can give me a call, send me an email. We're happy to help you out discussing that. For the Hope Scholarship, you got to have a 2.75 cumulative GPA at 24 and 48 attempted credit hours, a 3.0 cumulative GPA at 72 attempted credit hours and beyond. So as you can see, it's getting a little more complicated as I go on, right? So I wanted to make a point about our academic scholarships and the Hope Scholarship, specifically because regardless of attempted credit hours, completed credit hours, any of that, there's a common thread between the academic scholarships and the Hope Scholarship, that it's a 2.75 early and then it's a 3.0 later. I always tell people this: pretend it's a 3.0 the whole time, because it is so much easier. And I've heard you say this, Lindsay, it's so much easier to have a 3.0 from day one than it is to have a 2.75 and try to pull it up to a 3.0 in a semester or two. That is a much more Herculean effort to try to pull your lower cumulative GPA to a higher cumulative GPA in a short period of time than it is just to maintain the 3.0 the whole time. So generally speaking, for scholarships, just a blanket statement is have a 3.0 the whole time and be enrolled full time, and you should be okay. Okay. With that being said, at the University of Memphis, we have a system called Tiger Scholarship Manager. I'm going to plug this real quick. Tiger Scholarship Manager is our online application system for all of our private and departmental scholarships. It is open every year from mid-November until February the 1st for the following academic year. So it's going to open this November through February the 1st, 2022 for the 22-23 academic year. Okay. The applications for this year have already closed as of last February the 1st. There are over 700 scholarships on Tiger Scholarship Manager. And hypothetically speaking, every single one of those scholarships might have different requirements for maintaining them if they are renewable scholarships. They certainly have different requirements for receiving them, right? For being eligible, different qualifications. And so that's kind of my point is for scholarships, it can be a little bit more complicated. So it's very, very important to read all the information about every scholarship you apply for. Number one, to see if you qualify for it again. But also, if it's a renewable scholarship, how do I keep this scholarship? Because it can be different from one to the next, right? But generally speaking, if you have a 3.0 and you're enrolled full time, you'll keep most of the scholarships that you have. And then for, so like, obviously here, scholarship requirements are a higher standard than financial aid requirements, the loans and the grants, which is a 2.0 GPA, cumulative GPA, and a 67% completion percent.
That is really good information for our parents to know, because I think sometimes that gets so complicated and students might get a little confused. So that's great information for parents to know and kind of put that bug in their students' ear about what they need to be doing and checking in on them. Have you done your scholarship hours? Where's your GPA? Those types of things. And yes, I can't say it enough. Just pretend that they need a 3.0, because it is really, really hard to get that grade point average back up after, if you've had kind of a bad start to their career, because getting that up is very difficult. But that's really great. Thank you so much for that information. So another item that sometimes shows up on a student's financial aid award is work study.
Okay.
Can you tell parents a little bit about that and how that really factors into financial aid and how that actually works and what a student would need to do to get that award?
Okay, so work study has to do, so it is a need-based financial aid program. So you got to qualify for it based on the information and the qualifications and criteria on your FAFSA, kind of like with grants, kind of like with the subsidized loan. Okay, if you are awarded federal, and there is a specific question on the FAFSA, are you interested in federal work study? The answer should be yes, 100% of the time. Don't ever answer no to that question. If it's just extra money you could get, right? Doesn't mean you're going to be eligible, but if you answer no, they're not even going to look at you, right? So make sure that you answer yes to that question. Okay, so federal work study, here's kind of how it works. You're awarded X number of dollars. The student is awarded X number of dollars for an academic year. And then the student needs to go find an on-campus job so that they can get that money. And that's the kind of the key difference between federal work study and other financial aid awards. Loans, grants, and scholarships are going to pay out on or around fee payment deadline. Federal work study funding does not pay out on fee payment deadline. So if you see federal work study on your account, on your financial aid package, don't count that towards what you're budgeting for August 16th or any other fee payment deadline, right? Because it's not gonna pay out on that day. You do have to get an on-campus job in order to earn your federal work study money. Okay, so that's kind of what it is. Work is in the name of it. So you got to get that on-campus job. You work X number of hours a week, and your work study funding helps the department that you are working for pay your hourly wage. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that for a student who is eligible for federal work study against a student who is not eligible for federal work study, set them side by side, same qualifications and all that, the department is going to lean towards the student with federal work study first, because there's built-in money to help pay that student. It doesn't take as much out of the department's budget. It's more affordable for the department to hire a federal work study student, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you have federal work study, it might be a little bit easier for you to get an on-campus job. But here's the thing: the difference between federal work study jobs and student employment jobs, there's not really a difference. Different departments, they prefer federal work study, but it comes down to how much funding do they have available to pay students. Okay, that's really the preference one way or the other. But the actual job itself is going to be basically the same work for basically the same pay, whether you're federal work study or regular student employment. So if you are federal work study, make sure you get an on-campus job so you can get benefit from that money, so you can earn that money. If you're not federal work study, don't let that discourage you. You can still get an on-campus job, doing pretty much the same work for pretty much the same pay. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's kind of how work study works.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think parents need to understand that while it shows up on a financial aid package, it is not there immediately to really help. And often our students, that is that money that they use to go out to dinner on the weekends with their friends, or pay for gas money, or buy that extra Chick-fil-A or something like that once they run out of their Tiger Eats money. So that's an important distinction. So thank you. And the financial aid website also has some of those listings on it as well. So students can check that out and find a potential job.
That's right. So yeah, so federal work study, I had a phrase in my head for it. I can't remember what it is, but you're right. The financial aid website, we do have a listing of some jobs that advertise on our website, both for federal work study and for student employment. So yeah, so keep that in mind.
So as we kind of wrap up, what do you have any other pieces of advice or anything else we didn't cover that parents should really know in order to kind of help their student through this process? Not only is there maybe not just for new freshman parents, but even those continuing as well.
Yeah. So I've already mentioned about, we want to fill out the FAFSA every year. That's the most important thing to take away from this whole conversation. Fill out the FAFSA every year, because if you don't fill out the FAFSA, you're not going to have very much money, one way or the other. Okay, so filling out the FAFSA, and the earlier you do it, the better. It's available every year, October the 1st, for the following academic year. So that's one thing. I mentioned Tiger Scholarship Manager. Make sure that you are aware of scholarship deadlines. And so this is true for continuing students. This is true for any future students. So if there are any parents watching this who, as of, what are we in mid-June 2021, who are sophomores or juniors, application deadlines are very important, especially for funding, especially for scholarship funding. Okay, so I mentioned Tiger Scholarship Manager. It's open every year from mid-November until February the 1st. That is something for all students, incoming freshmen, future incoming freshmen, continuing students. Make sure that you're checking out graduate students even. So parents, if you're trying to come back to school, make sure that you are looking at Tiger Scholarship Manager between mid-November and February the 1st. And the earlier the better on that too. It's not necessarily that the earlier that you turn in an application, the more consideration you get based on, it's not a first come first serve deal. But a lot of these scholarships are going to want letters of recommendation, right? And so if you start asking someone for a letter of recommendation in the first week of December, probably you're going to get it by February the 1st with plenty of time to spare. If you call somebody up for a letter of recommendation on January 31st, probably not going to get here in time, right? So the earlier that you're looking at that, the better. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. So Tiger Scholarship Manager for everybody. For my future incoming freshman students, okay? Make sure you're checking our website for application deadlines for other types of scholarships, for the incoming freshman specific scholarships and transfer scholarships too. So if we have any transfer interested people, make sure you're checking our website for the most up-to-date information about those deadlines, because they are specific deadlines. They are specific deadlines and specific applications for many of those scholarships. Our academic scholarships don't have a separate application other than your application to the University of Memphis. But they do have a deadline. They do have a priority consideration deadline. So keep that in mind. So yeah, that would be kind of the two tips I would say is fill out your FAFSA every year. The earlier, the better. Make sure you're paying attention to deadlines, especially when we're talking about scholarships. And don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us questions. We are here to help. On one hand. On the other hand, don't forget, federal privacy laws prevent us from telling you a lot of details, parents, by yourselves. So get your students with you. Call us on a conference call if you are not in the same place at the same time. If you are in the same place at the same time, make sure that they're with you for the beginning of the conversation. They don't have to sit there for the whole time, right? I promise. People call me and the parents call me and I'll say, okay, well, is your son there? And they're like, yeah, he's over there. He's in the next room. And I was like, okay, bring him over. And I say, hi, my name is Matt. They tell me their name. I say, can I talk to your parents? They say, yes. I'm like, all right, good. We're good. You can go. You can say if you want, but you can. Student has to give me permission to talk to the parent, and that's it. So keep that part in mind, right? We want to help you. We want to explain things to you, but we do have to do it by the regulations. And so don't hesitate to reach out to us, but make sure your student's with you when you reach out to us. We are always happy to help in any way that we can.
Yeah, we want to help. We just do have to follow the rules. So that's we really do. So if a parent and a student want to contact your office, how is the best way to do that with their questions or just reaching out and making sure everything's okay?
Right. So the financial aid office, our phone number is 901-678-4825. 901-678-4825. The scholarships office is 901-678-3213. 901-678-3213. If you go to our website, memphis.edu, and type in financial aid into the search bar. I'm making sure that I'm telling you the right way to get there. Financial aid, and click on the very first link, and you scroll down. The first box in the text here, it's a big box that has contact us, and so you can submit an online help request from our website, memphis.edu/financial aid, memphis.edu/financial aid. So that's a way to get help from us after hours, electronically. Try to get those answered as quickly as possible within just a business day or two. Of course, depending on volume for response times. If it's August, which is registration time, might take a little bit longer. But if it's the third week of March, there's not as much going on then, right? So it kind of depends on the time of year. Obviously, I am always here to help. My email address specifically is M as in Memphis, D as in dog, Rhodes, like the college, RHODES @memphis.edu. So again, that's MDRHODES @memphis.edu. So you can reach out to me directly, and I can answer questions about financial aid or scholarships, or I can at least point you in the direction of someone who can answer that question for you.
Yeah, I think, thank you for all that information, and we'll make sure and include it below as well, so that all of our parents have it and they can get in touch with you in case they need it, along with their students as well, of course. So, well, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. We really appreciate it. I know our parents appreciate it, and all the hard work you and your office do during the summer, particularly for our new students as they're coming in. If you have orientation coming up, you may meet Matt or one of his colleagues as well in the financial aid office this summer during orientation. Well, thank you again for joining us, and thank you to all of our parents, and we will see you at the next Tiger Talk. Thanks.
All right. Y'all have a good day.